Hello, today we're looking at stem cells and their possible use for medical treatment. Now, just as a reminder or just as an introduction as to what we mean by stem cells, here we've got an example of a fertilized egg, or in fact an egg that's just about to be fertilized. Now, under normal circumstances inside the body, when that egg is fertilized, it goes on to become an embryo, which is a ball of cells, as you can see there. And that ball of cells is what we describe as undifferentiated. All the cells in that ball of cells are undifferentiated, and we've looked at that in a previous video. But the key point here is that those undifferentiated cells can become any other type of cell. They can become any other cell that is needed or is going to be used in the body. Now, these cells, under normal circumstances, under a normal pregnancy, go through a period of specialization. And when they specialize, they make specialized tissues, they make organs, they make organ systems, and those organ systems go on to make an individual. So that's under the circumstances of a normal pregnancy. So here we go. We've got our individual. Looks a bit funny without the face. Let's maybe put some features on there. Okay, slightly strange looking. But this is what happens under normal circumstances, under a normal pregnancy. Now, the reason why we talk about this, if we rewind and go back, is because these cells here of the embryo, they can actually be cloned. Scientists can actually clone those, make copies of themselves, identical copies of themselves, and they can then possibly be made to make any other type of cell that the scientists might want to make. These cells are actually called embryonic stem cells because they are stem cells, i.e. they are undifferentiated and they come from an embryo. So we can make them into whichever cell we might want. So why would we do that? Well, this is where they might be useful in medical treatment. One example would be there's a disease called diabetes, which means the body can't make insulin, or cells in the pancreas can't make insulin. So if we were to make these embryonic stem cells into brand new cells for the pancreas, we could cure diabetes. We could make new cells that make insulin. Or another example is the treatment of paralysis. Paralysis is where we have damage to nerve cells and nerve tissue, and if we could make new nerve tissue, that would help to treat paralysis. But the problem is, where do we get these embryonic stem cells from? We can't just pluck them out of pregnant women. But if we look at something like IVF treatment, which is to help couples who can't have children, that's where we have the development of embryos, and we often make more embryos than are needed. And those embryos won't actually have a use if the mother becomes pregnant. So that's a possible source. Now, there are other sources in the body as well. So if we look at bones, if we look inside a bone, there's a certain type of tissue inside the bone, and that's called bone marrow. So we have bone marrow inside the bone, and that actually is a source of stem cells. We call these adult stem cells that can be taken from the bone marrow of adults. Now, the issue with these, though, while it might seem like good news that we don't have to use embryos, the issue is that we can form many types of cells, but not all types of cells. Not all types of cells in the body can be made from adult stem cells. One type they can make, for example, though, is blood cells. So while adult stem cells are useful, they're not as useful as, for example, embryonic stem cells because they make a narrower range of other types of cell. Now we can take a look at the uses of stem cells in medicine, so what the potential uses might be, and they could potentially cure a whole range of different diseases. Two common examples are that of Parkinson's disease, and another one is diabetes. Now, the reason why these might be targeted is because stem cells could be made to produce new cells that would replace damaged cells caused by these two diseases and could potentially therefore cure these two diseases, amongst a lot of other examples as well. There are other factors we have to take into consideration though. There are risk factors. So the risks of using stem cells, one of those is cancer. So if you imagine you've used stem cells to produce a bunch of new cells for a patient, if the stem cells keep dividing or divide rapidly inside the patient's body, that could lead to cancer. So that's one risk of using stem cells, and also the fact that we might have rejection of the cells that have been implanted into a patient. And by rejection, we mean that the cells are attacked by the patient's immune system. The cells are attacked by the patient's immune system. And this potentially is obviously a problem in terms of getting the new tissue into the patient. Okay, so those are the key ideas about stem cells, embryonic stem cells and adult stem cells, and possible uses in medicine and the possible risks.